Today's guest is Adele Wiejaczka, who has been a CEO and creative director of Live Large Design for over a decade, serving 6 and 7 figure businesses to create their brands, launch their online platforms, and grow their visibility to a larger reach and impact than they ever imagined. So, Adele, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
I'm great. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, yeah, I mean, I'd love for you to just kind of give a breakdown for us of, like how you got to doing what you're doing. I see like you do a lot of exciting stuff with a lot of different types of brands. So, why don't you kind of contextualize it a little bit and break that down for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I always say I was a creator since I was about 3. I was making stuff. I did my first all-nighter when I was in kindergarten. I think I misinterpreted a project and turned it into an art project. I grew up with, an artistic father. He's a carpenter as well. So my family just really valued, the handmade. So that was really cool. I fell in love with books and wine labels as I got older and just, was fascinated with layout essentially. Of course, this was pre-Creative Cloud and a lot of, the cool programs that we have now. So, yeah, I got my undergrad in a different niche. It was in environmental education, and then got my master's in graphic design. But I always knew I wanted my own business, and I think that's largely lifestyle. I just enjoy the freedom of that, and also the opportunity to grow and move agilely with my clients and also with my processes. Yeah, and I think I launched my business, right before I went to grad school. So I was just a baby designer at the time. I've kind of been through all the evolutions of what a graphic designer can be after a decade. Like I'm now a creative director. I incorporate all sorts of marketing approaches into my work because as great as beautiful branding is, it's only as effective as the copy and the funnels and all the pieces that go with that. So I really enjoy like an overarching comprehensive look at my clients, and that's what brings me joy. So I really like playing that creative director role and seeing kind of A to Z with the platforms that they're building. Right now, I niche pretty heavily in e-learning, and that's just been so fun because it puts me with experienced entrepreneurs. Typically, they're already making 6 figures. They understand their ideal client, and they're looking to grow in more of a global sense and increase their impact. So all my clients, and myself included, are impact focused. What obviously want to make like a positive difference in the world, but typically I'm working with like health and wellness, or one of my clients is infertility. Another client is in teaching entrepreneurs and corporate people about working with software and developer contractors. So just super interesting. And I think as a lifelong learner, it just is very fulfilling to get to come into other people's businesses for 3 to 6 months and get to see how they do things and help bring new insights into how it could be improved.
Love it. And I think it's like unless you actually like really enjoy immersing yourself in that whole thing, like because there's like so many moving pieces, there's a lot of like complexity. You got to balance the tech with the human side, and then like the
Mhm.
messaging side. Like it's like unless you enjoy all of those pieces, I think it's really hard to do what you do, and then especially do it well. So yeah, kudos to you for like it's just like even when you speak it just sounds like okay, yeah, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I'm doing everything that I can do to like not even maximize, but just expand as much as I can, like in that role. So if anything else you want to add to that, by all means, floor is yours.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Yeah, I think being a creative entrepreneur is a unique challenge in the entrepreneurial world. So I also mentor young designers because I've been there. I started my business in a dry cabin in northern Alaska, so no plumbing, like little internet card, which is kind of dating me, but pretty bare bones. And yeah, I of course got support through my design processes from my graduate degree, but didn't get a ton of entrepreneurial like learning. So I always say I put myself through my own MBA and learning business on my own, and that's challenging. I see that in any creative, whether that's a designer, a musician. I used to work a lot with musicians. We're so in the craft that I think it can make the business side of it just challenging. Like I feel bad charging for something, or like the human side of me used to override the entrepreneur. Not anymore, but so yeah, I've leaned heavily on processes and project management tools. And I am really excited about like the evolution of AI and how that can support people like me. So
Beautiful. Love it. Well, I mean, as a seasoned entrepreneur yourself, I'd love to just dive into exactly, essentially what brings you here and, what are the top either problems or challenges that you're facing right now?
ooh, so fun. So yeah, much like my clients, I'm, at that six figure looking to grow mark. And a lot of us in this moment, we're doing a lot of one-to-one work. We're, service providers. I'm still doing, 80% of the work. At one iteration of my business, I had a larger team, and then COVID happened, and, things got complicated just in the world. And I think people's emotions and finances. And so I simplified during that period and just wanted to scale back to working very closely with my clientele. But now I'm back in that spot where, I get to leverage a team soon again. And, because I don't want to be staying up all night. So I would say time is definitely something I'm playing with right now. I tend to be like a fast-paced person, but that can result in like this sense of rushing through the day. And I think that can detract from aspects of the creative and, sense of abundance and just being really present with my client work. Of course I am, but when you're pushing through, every single project, that's something, yeah, I'm like, in that place of bypassing, I would say, survival. And I want to bypass thriving even and live in that space of impact. But that should also exist in my life where I get time to go be outdoors, which is my passion and stuff like that. So I suppose that's the biggest challenge I'm facing. And to give you a little background, I grew up in a very workaholic family, and I love that about them. We grew up in the Midwest and we have a great work ethic, but I think we lead with that. And this idea of balance is not something I was taught when I was younger. So I can see that in me and my siblings. It's pretty funny.
Got it. Okay. So let's just say, I mean, there's a lot in that, right? Because you're going to have kind of let's just say the technical objective solution, meaning like, yeah, there's going to like all the things you kind of already know, right? There's going to be systems, automations, SOPs and stuff in place to create that machine that's going to power, whatever the next scaling evolution is of your business, right? To have that foundation in place. And there's going to be like the subjective, you as the leader need to do X, Y, Z. So you mentioned, okay, I want to move into thriving and move into impact and then move into balance and kind of know more of what that's like because it wasn't something that I grew up with. So if you had to kind of, let's just say, boil it down, at least big picture, and we can go deeper if necessary, like what do you think is like the biggest bottleneck to all of that happening?
Oh yeah, good questions. So my clients again are much like me. We lead a bit with a perfectionism. And like I think I have to always remember I'm not who I used to be. So maybe I had challenge, not it wasn't even challenges with teams, but like COVID was a weird time. So I can now manifest, if we want to use that word, or create a team that we rock it together. I think there could just be like a different variation of that. So that doesn't answer your question. Distill it into one thing. Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably, being really articulate about where I'm spending my time. I mean, of course, I've done like the time audits, and as a creative, it's important that I go down the rabbit hole sometimes and just fulfill, the creative in me that wants to like spend way too much time picking fonts, because I love that. So I'll try to do that on the weekends, and then during the week be like, okay, let's focus on like, the income driving tasks. And then I think some of that is like a limitation of myself in my own marketing, which is hilarious because that's exactly what I do for my clients. So I can relate to them a lot. Like they want a beautiful brand. They want to feel proud of what they're putting out there before they go and kind of plaster social media and any other marketing channel. So sometimes my client work, or maybe all the time, leads in front of my own marketing. So that's a shift I'm making this year for sure. And I carve out at least a day a week where I'm focusing on my marketing. I carry a little guilt for that because, I always look to do my client work first and foremost. So that's kind of interesting.
Okay. So I guess I'm just gonna reflect things back to you that like I pick up, and then we'll kind of sift through and go somewhere, because I think this is very common. I think with people that are creative, where it's like your brain's just going into connecting 10 different spots, and then when you get into like those 10 different spots, it also connects to like 10 other different spots. So all the question I'm going to ask is just literally to like sift through that and see kind of where the root lies. It's not to like avoid any one particular thing, so just so that you're kind of clear on
Sure.
that. So you mentioned at some point, like I said, I lead sometimes with perfectionism, the limitation of my own marketing, and then there's some like guilt with regards to doing your own marketing. And then there's a bit of like control as well, in the sense of like, well, I want to do the creative part and I want to do the fonts, but I know that's taken away from like all the other stuff, etc. So let's just say between those three, right? The perfectionism, the guilt, and the control, what do you feel like is, or what resonates the most with you as like the core issue, or a more important issue than the other ones?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna choose guilt just because like that's like it's so weird. I really haven't gotten to probably the bottom of that. So I think that'll be kind of fun to talk about. Yeah, why should I feel guilty for posting on social media like the beautiful moonrise the other night, as I'm like up at my campsite, or showcasing like my awesome client, results that they get, so that's interesting. It's probably something around visibility, which again I see it all the time in my own clients. So it's funny to see that in myself as well. And I've been so fortunate in business, like between referrals and just the way that I get work. I think if I could solve this piece, like I could truly expand into like, that larger audience that I want. And like I said, I'm creating a group program. So I'm starting to create space to have more clientele than I've ever had. So
Got it. And it's like the one thing that's standing in the way is this like visibility hesitation. Like that's the only thing.
probably for me to like, I mean, I always do well at what I do, but I'm like, I'm gonna do great, like, and when you focus on the impact side of it, my group program is freaking awesome. Like at a fraction of the cost, people get to build their e-learning platforms with still that professional brand presence. So I'm just really like excited and proud of it. And I'm like, I think it's going to help a lot of people be able to get what they're teaching out into the world a lot easier and more professionally, and without that sort of visibility hiccup, because they're going to have my support.
Got it. Okay. So I guess let's just zoom in or zoom out before we zoom in. So if we're just looking at, because you're saying, okay, the biggest thing that I feel like is my bottleneck is this visibility issue. So what I'm hearing is like you have this vast experience and this great program that can really scale and allow you to get like the lifestyle pieces that you're looking from your program. But a big hurdle to that is the actual like visibility is going to take for you to go there. So if you could eliminate, like, let's just say, like, if right now I could wave a magic wand and you lost all of the visibility issues you have, who would
Mhm.
you?
Who would I be?
Yeah,
I think I would be like present on social media. There's some other challenges there because like I could spend all day making a carousel because I'm a designer. It's like it's hard for me to like, not that other people throw stuff out there, but if that makes sense, it's just it can be a time suck. But yeah, I'd be really really consistent. I think consistent is the word I'm striving for, whether that's um, social media. I did start a newsletter this year, which I wanted to start for 10 years. So that's been really fun. So that comes out, every week, and that's felt really good to have that consistently. And also just to like, interact with my audience and be like, oh, they're reading this. Like, look at the KPIs. Like, so I think I'm very driven by community and collaboration. So if I can look to marketing as an opportunity for me to obtain that, which is part of the reason why I'm here talking to you today, like, I'm very motivated about building, entrepreneurial community, creative community, and just general connections, because that lights me up.
got it. Okay. So there's one part of you that's like super excited about diving into all of this. And then there's another part that's kind of super hesitant to do the work needed to make all of that happen. And that's kind of the visibility issues. Like, is that accurate as far as
Yeah,
what your internal
I
experience is
mean,
like, or no?
I don't think work is ever too much of the problem, but yeah, I mean, maybe that's where like the time thing comes in. Cause I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this week's social media content. And then I'm like, okay, well, I got through Wednesday and I'm out of time, or I'm falling asleep, or whatever it is, and so yeah, like a realism of like what I can get done in an amount of time. And that can go to like, I am very efficient in my work, but if I'm dropping into that creative side where I'm going down the rabbit holes and like, oh, let's explore this layout, I think that's where like, things get divergent instead of like just objective with the outcome. So I think often I do things probably 80%, but it's like, well, what if I did them 100%, and then also build in that consistency, like you say, who could I be and who could I reach? And I think the compounded effect of that could be really powerful.
Okay. So I do it till 80%, and it's the last 20% that would actually cause me to ship that I actually fall back on. And then that creates this perpetual perfectionism loop.
Yeah, and probably if I do something 80%, I'm probably a little disappointed in myself, right? Like, oh shit, like I meant to do X, Y, or Z. I didn't do that to the fullest extent. So I think that can decay my own like self-trust and getting, whatever sort of objective I want done in my own marketing.
Got it.
If that
Okay.
makes sense.
So if we're then kind of going on that thread, right? So I do things 80%. That creates this point when I don't complete the final 20, that decays my own self-trust. So it sounds like there's a lot of like hemorrhage of your energy and then like the emotional energy to like maintain that. Cause like doing 80% of the work to not launch and then, finish, like it seems like it's a lot of wasted effort.
Yeah.
Stop right before the finish line.
Yeah, no, and I was looking back over like, I'm putting together a new lead map, and looking back over the years of all the tools I've made and different things that, I'm excited and passionate about and would be very helpful. And yeah, not all of them have a presence where people can actually obtain them, and some of that's like the tech side of it. Like I myself moved, my platform over to Kajabi like 6 years ago. So and some of that is also just the way that I've done business. I've been in small towns. I lived in Alaska for 10 years. So I had a word of mouth reputation. And now it's time for me to expand into an online market, truly the same way that I do with my clients. So I understand some of it, but yeah, it frustrates me for sure. Like, and frustration is not a great space for me to be in. It's like energized and inspired, is what produces results for me. So,
well, and especially as a creative, like you don't want to be creating out of a frustrated like energy. So I get that completely. And this is just to kind of play devil's advocate, right? So like I've spent a career and I've gotten really good at, referrals and being behind the scenes, and like people know me and they just send people to me, which is great. Like there's nothing wrong
yeah,
with that, as like that's a space that I'm in. And also extremely convenient to never have to really dive into and face the parts of you that
totally.
don't want to be seen.
Totally.
So what lands for you with that reflection?
Yeah, I mean, and some of them might be taught. So I went to art school, got my MFA, and art school, if anybody's listening who's been to art school, it's an interesting environment. They drill it into you, like your work should stand for itself and it's not about you. And I do believe that with my design work. If I'm branding your business, it's all about your business and the people you're looking to reach. So don't have an ego in that. If you want, this logo versus this logo, like, so in some ways I get it, but I think the way that I interpreted that was there's no Adele in like the front end of my marketing. And so it took me to like 2017 to put a picture of myself on my website. And there's a few things there. It's like I don't want business because I'm a girl, or like, and I've had instances. I mean, I'm sure we all have, of like, non-genuine, like business connections that feel like a waste of time. And I'm like, I'm here to do business. And like, so yeah, I think that's some of it too, but it could all be belief-based or just how I interpreted art school, right? Like they could say something that could have rolled off my back, but I really, embodied that, I guess.
Got it. Okay. So what, like, if you had to guess, what do you think those beliefs are?
Oh, I mean, one of them is just that, yeah, art should stand for itself. Like, and I'm interested. It's like I love like testing things and KPIs. It's like I want to see data. And I still believe that, right? But yeah, someone shouldn't like my work just because they like me. They should like me to work with me, right? Some of the
Okay,
other
so even if we
ones.
just go, like, let's just stick to that one. So the art
Okay.
or the work should stand for itself. Okay, so why is that limiting in terms of what it allows you to show of yourself?
Because people like me. I know that sounds a little arrogant, but it's like I do want people to like connect with the work. And I would, my preference is that that's how they come into working with me. Is they're like, I love your work, and oh, you're cool too.
Okay, so and I'm just gonna poke around with it. Let's just see
Yeah.
what we're like. So if is it like I guess what lands true for you about that statement? Like people like me. So if I post about me, people will like me, which is actually going to detract from the work. Is that accurate as far as how you feel or no?
Yeah, I mean, probably. Yeah, I think there's like a conscious part of my brain that's like, could play devil's advocate with that with myself. But I think so. I think I believe that when I post a picture of myself on Instagram, I cringe a little bit.
Okay.
I'd rather show
And
work. Yeah.
so I guess if we're diving deeper into that, so I cringe when I post pictures of myself could potentially be different than, well, if I post pictures of myself, people will like me, they'll kind of ignore the work, so they're not buying for authentic reasons.
Right.
So is that the cringe factor or is it something else?
Whew, yeah, it's a good conversation. I want the relationship to be with the work. Yeah. And it's I guess it's awkward for me to talk about, but it's like, we've kind of moved into this era. I mean, I grew up with no social media, and then all of a sudden we're living with this Instagram world. I was overseas for a long time in Bali. And I mean, you can play the game and like post a picture of yourself and post a picture of your work and see the results. Like, and it's very weird to me that we live in a culture that would like embrace pictures, or I've seen so many staged environments overseas and in America too. It's everywhere. It's like you're spending hours to get the perfect shot or the calf, and I'm like, I don't have a lot of patience for that. So I don't want to compete on that level. I want to do the work and have people be attracted to my work. So I think, like, I want to play social media by my game, I suppose. And maybe I'm still trying to figure out what that is. Certainly I understand from a sales perspective that people need to connect with me to be able to buy my product. And I'm at a point where I'm willing to do that because I love what I do, and I think my product's really good. So, if that's an avenue in, I'm now comfortable with that. So yes, I'll post it. You can look in one of my whatever recent ones. I don't post a lot, but is of me, and the messaging is quite good, I think. So but yeah, how do I take that further to like actually be excited about social media and the connections that I make there? And maybe some of it too is it's like I can spend a lot of time creating that stuff and not get a ton of like response to that, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. And that I think is where the perfectionism comes in. So, okay, so if we're just looking at the whole work belief then, um, with regards to that, when it comes to the work should stand for itself, and I want the relationship to be with the work, I can't put Adele in like front end marketing. If people like me, they're not necessarily buying from me. So if somebody was to buy because they like you and not the work, then fill in the blank.
Then that's going to be a pretty challenging work process together. When I partner with working with someone, it truly is a relationship. And it's me intuiting their feedback and applying that to the work. And it's taken me, years to hone it to the level that I'm at. And, I'm really excited about that. But yeah, if they don't like the work that I do, I'm going to be providing work for them. And then,
Right.
they have that opportunity to, of course I love feedback. And as long as someone's game to play the game with me, I always successfully brand. I always successfully get to the completion of a project. But yeah, sometimes, my hardest logo is like 15 back and forth rounds. And you're like, wow, this is, like we got there. But, that's where I think from a business model perspective, I can start losing money, losing time. So, what we typically, recommend is people come in to work with us as designers, as, whether that's web branding, really funnels, marketing, they should check out our portfolio. Hopefully it takes them 5 minutes and they're like, yeah, love the aesthetic. I tend to have a kind of clean aesthetic, but
Got it. Okay. So let's say from that answer, it's abundantly clear that you would know exactly how to filter who's a right fit or who isn't. Like they're not going to kind of get through your process if after all these years, like you kind of have a feel that this person isn't buying for the right reasons. So
yeah,
from the
true.
outside looking in, it's like, okay, well, that only comes from experience and you have the experience and that's not a doubt. So going back to, well, people aren't buying, like people shouldn't be buying because of me. It's like that, is that really just the kind of surface level reason to like explain or rationalize that away, or is there something deeper there? So my question to you then would be, looking at that particular dynamic, if people are buying hypothetically, it's like because they like you but they don't like the work, like would you ever even be in that scenario to begin with?
I think it's a great point. Probably not anymore. And that's the interesting about like growing up and like having a decade of business experiences. Yes, in the beginning, I had challenging clients or not good fits, but you're totally right. Like these days, I either, maybe I'll take on a client that I'm like, oh, I'm not quite sure, but I knew it. So like, I can't really look back and be like, that snuck up on me. I'll be like, well, I really liked them, but I knew they didn't, know how to use technology, and I knew it'd be kind of hard or whatever.
Right. So if
Um,
that's true,
mhm.
then is this hesitation to actually be authentic online actually about the work and the work not being showcased and people not trusting your work? Or is it actually about a part of you that doesn't feel safe in some way, feels a threat, or isn't comfortable with being seen in this sort of authentic light?
Oh yeah, I'll own that second answer. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So if that's the case, right, putting this pretty bow on it of, well, the work should be highlighted and it should be about the work, even though it's very unlikely that somebody's going to get through that's like, paying you thousands of dollars just so that they could talk to you.
Yeah.
Right. It actually is a great way to distract from this core issue of, okay, well, what is it about me that I feel unsafe to actually go and be visible, to
Yeah.
essentially, which also translates to playing big, right? Because if you're not allowing yourself to be visible, then you're also not gonna be in your own magnificence when you're out. So what lands for you from that reflection?
No, I definitely identify with that. It's funny in person, I don't have any of that, because I always say I'm a feeler. It's like I can, and I've gotten better at doing it through Zoom now too, of course. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's very, I don't know if the word's easy, but like it can be effortless for me to connect in person, to do talks, to be, in front of a room, whatever, like I feel very comfortable with that now. And so, yeah, the online space is a little different for me. I mean, if I'm really honest with you, I think it's something to do with like something about like being a woman and like the objectification. I'm comfortable with my body, but I haven't yet figured out how to like be comfortable with that in combination with business. And it's kind of funny, like like when I was in Bali, my Bali years, I don't wear a lot of clothes, like it's hot, and like so sometimes there'll be a picture and it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, do I want that to represent me from a business perspective? Like there's slight nuances, I suppose, between those. Yeah, and probably experiences I've had over the years. None of them have been horrible, but there's been some that are like not cool, business wise. And it's easier for me to assess that in person than online. Yeah. And then there's some too, like I launched my design course, I think 2 years ago now. And it is just interesting. It's an easier environment to say crap, So I do think my brain in the social media environment focuses on the negative. So there'll be like, 50 nice responses, and then there'll be one person who like says something grumpy, and it's kind of easy to be like, oh, like, do people think I'm a hack? And you're like, whatever, we're all using a particular marketing methodology and there's nothing wrong with that.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So I think hey, I applaud you for kind of moving into and sharing the messier but realer parts and nuances of this conversation. Because yeah, I agree with you. It's a completely different ball game for men and women when it comes to this whole thing. And you know, whether you agree with it or not, like that's just the reality that it is. And I don't agree with it, but it's just like that's unfortunately going to be the price of admission for kind of playing this game. So I appreciate you diving into that. And it's like when you begin to peel back the layers, like really the core of it is this lack of safety for, because you were talking about before, okay, I want to just feel enthusiastic and like open and like all of the like non-frustrating limiting things to do this the same way that I feel in my work, like in the background. And it's very hard to feel those things and to force yourself to feel those things if subconsciously your nervous system is always looking for a threat. So whether this is
Totally.
looking for a threat for comments, for, objectification, for is this like a physical threat to who's going to like do whatever. So
Hmm.
as you're shaking your head, so why don't you just like let me know what resonates with you from that, what lands, what doesn't, and we can take it from there.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll be very vulnerable. But so historically my attachment style has been more on the anxious. I've worked a lot around that, but that's where that hypervigilance comes from, is just a constant kind of assessment of surroundings. And I even trained Muay Thai, which was really, really cool. And it's taught me spatial, kind of recognition. And I think it's just very neat. And this conversation brings to light, maybe I haven't learned how to do that in an online environment. I know how to do that physically, right? I travel the world. I'm a solo female traveler. I live out of a truck rig. Like, I live a pretty unconventional life, and I feel very safe, in an online environment. Like, it's just a whole world that, sometimes I make the excuse, like, I didn't grow up with it. I'm not as like, it's not as ingrained in me. I grew up in the woods. A lot of my life has been pretty analog, and I like that, but my work is online. So yeah, I mean, I don't know the steps to like integrate that better. And like, I'm great at learning. So I usually solve fear or hesitation with education, and then I feel empowered.
Absolutely. And again, I'm not surprised that that's the case, because what I was going to reflect back to you as well with regards to the dichotomy of like if I'm in a room where I'm giving a presentation and like I know the people, etc. Like I have no issues with any of these things. And I'm assuming here, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like I don't think you would have an issue even if the fears of the objectification or whatever come up in like a one-to-one scenario or like with people. It's
Right.
like I feel like you would know how to handle that,
Right.
set your boundaries, kind of like, no, that's like we're here for business, whatever. Right. So okay. So that's a correct assumption.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I
Yeah.
guess I can give you a bit of an example. I did, so I do, especially when I was traveling, I did a lot of like talks, and, we all did. It was like Skillshare, super fun. Always loved doing that. And then I did one where we streamed it on Facebook through whatever, app connection there is. I think Zoom to Facebook. So you're talking to nobody, like you can't see the little heads even. And it really threw me off. It was super interesting because I'm like not getting any feedback back. So I think, a lot of how I live my life is, bouncing off other people and playing with that energy. And I think it makes me very good at what I do, because I can read into like people's feedback. I build connection really well with people. I'm comfortable with intimacy in the different forms, I like depth. But yeah, so when and maybe social media kind of feels like this black hole that you're throwing things into, and it does feel a little bit like I'm throwing spaghetti on the wall. Even though there's like, obviously, I even teach my clients, like, here's stuff that works. That's funny.
Got it. Well, then the through line there, and this is sort of what I was getting at with all these questions, right, is ultimately around control, especially with the anxious attachment style, right? Like, what are you going to be hyper vigilant to? You're going to be hyper vigilant to other people's responses. That's why it is an anxious attachment, because you're always anxious looking for where's a threat. Let me optimize for like where people are happy, where I can make them happy, where they're not going to react a particular way. Like that is the anxiousness that comes from that hypervigilance. And it is solely dependent on being in environments where like I can scan and be hyper vigilant of all of the little nuances of what people are doing. I can see
Yeah.
their tonality, I can see their reaction, I can see their body language, I can see their response, I can feel them. And I'm great at that because of, you know, all the experiences I've had. There's also the gift aspect to it, which you mentioned, as far as like that also makes me very good at my job because I'm so in tune with like what is really being said under the surface. So that's the gift of the pattern, right? And obviously the distortion is like when it's hyper vigilant, and you get none of those things online,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Online, it is now going from like a contained environment to an absolutely never ending field, right? It's like, I
Right.
don't know where the edges and the boundaries of this thing are. So it's going to be very hard to then control and find safety in the things that I've grown up with my entire life. So before I go on, what lands for you there?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me. And I think that's why, I'm starting to learn little things that help me, like KPIs, watching open rates in my newsletter, Google Analytics, just seeing how long are people spending on certain pages. So, maybe that piece is beyond just what is working and also is supporting that whether it's hypervigilance or just, I think a part of me, I don't like to do stuff that just isn't gonna be entertaining or effective. If you paid me $15,000 and I built your platform and you never used it, I'd be sad. Like I want my work to be utilized and effective. So yeah, I'm curious what other things I could find that build up that side that kind of feeds me.
Right. Well, the first question then would be like, is knowing your conversion rates and your engagement numbers really going to help your nervous system be more regulated at the wild west of like the online world?
I don't know about social media. I do know with the newsletters, like because they take me some time and they're quite vulnerable. I really enjoy them because I take a story from my life, apply it to business, but people are getting to know me through it, and I feel like I'm building connection. And that's, if I know I'm going to get connection out of it, I'm willing to really do anything. Um, so that side is working for me. Plus, I'm getting responses or whatever sort of feedback I'm getting from people. Yeah, sometimes when I post, it's like I'll have that obsession too to be like, oh, who liked it? And like go look. And I'm like, how annoying. Like, why do I do that? Like, why do we do that? Is that, addiction to affirmation? Is it, I don't know what that is. So that might be a hesitancy I have as well, because I don't want to be spending my time in that space. So maybe I need to create some discipline. I don't know, around that.
So it's a beautiful answer to a question that I didn't actually ask. So very, very well articulated, beautifully said. And right, this is one of the interesting things about this pattern and then about smart people that have it. Because
Mhm.
when smart people are anxious around something, they have a beautiful way to use their heads to dance around it with all these like shiny things, factual information, truthful explanations, really good observations that are great and true, but aren't actually useful at addressing the core thing, right? Because the question I asked
Sure.
was like, okay, well, is metrics and optimizing for, your messaging really going to solve the nervous system that's dysregulated around the lack of control you have for being visible online, right? And where your brain went to was, well, yeah, like I do really good newsletters that are like really thoughtful and they build community. Great. And it doesn't really answer the core question. So why do you think that disconnection happened?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Um, I don't know if I have an answer for you. Yeah, it's like, of course I believe in marketing, but I also, yeah, don't want my life to be dictated by it. I don't,
Absolutely. And I just, the only reason I'm cutting you off now is because like I have a hard stop for this. So I just
yeah,
want to make sure you feel complete with this, right? And kind of get, because you asked a bunch of times, okay, well, what do I actually do with this? Right. So in my process, it's like basically big picture, three major steps that I walk clients through, right? So reveal, heal, and eliminate whatever the pattern is. So in this instance, and much of what we do later in a container, like this is about the reveal thing. And in this instance, like you actually have, and it's very abundantly clear that you've done a lot of inner work on yourself already. So as far as like the awareness piece, that there's a lot of pieces already at play there. But the part that's still missing in like the reveal piece is either the willingness or the readiness to be like, okay, well, this particular issue has a lot of surface level manifestations in stuff you're already good at, which is neck up, metrics, engagement, mailing list, the tech solutions to this, consistency, discipline, productivity. You know all of these things. You do it for your clients, right? Like you said multiple times, right? So the willingness and the readiness isn't to optimize neck up. It's actually willingness to dive in and heal the second step, which is neck down. Because this is not a mental challenge for you. It's actually a nervous system emotional challenge, right? What is it about this space? What is it about this work? And fundamentally, what is it about the next evolution of me that my business demands to expand, which is to be somebody who's not in the background anymore. The only way for you to like hold all of that is to be able to enter into the space that's going to hold the whole polarity of what it means to be completely and utterly visible online, which means a lot of the BS that comes from being a woman in this wild west of, you know, everything. So again, before I go on, just what lands and what doesn't from that.
No, that makes perfect sense for sure. And I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, I do. You know, this year it's funny because I'm in like I have an energy mentor, which, you know, she has her own methodologies. So I appreciate how you know, articulate that. But like a lot of kind of the personal work I, you know, gravitate towards is about like subduing the nervous system for sure. And, you know, like how amazing would it be if like that excites me, if there's a version of me where social media and marketing it's not just about ease, it's about like that being fun for me and representing more of me in a way that feels good. And you know, I'm not like having a mental dialogue around after I post. I mean, the hardest part I think probably for anxious attachment is like when you send the email, when you post the thing, you know, it's like it's not creating it, it's not even putting it out there per se, it's managing responses to that, right?
Yeah, it's the last 20%. Like it's the reason why you don't press send, right? It's the reason why you spend 80% of your time hemorrhage it and then don't do the last 20% because of that anxiousness. And I can guarantee you that you can step into the version of yourself that is actually enthusiastic and excited about who you get to be online. And the proof of that is if you've overcome your anxious attachment style in one area, then you just need to now navigate how to do it in this area. So 110%, I can guarantee you that can happen. And that's exactly what I said. Like it's that's the last step remaining for you in like the reveal phase. Then the heal phase is going to be getting yourself back to what I call whole, meaning you learned these patterns in order to survive. You don't need them any longer. And you know that intellectually, but your nervous system doesn't. And when you go online, it looks like something that's still a threat. So healing that is healing the part that thinks that there's a threat there and returning to who you are beyond that, which is why I asked you, well, who would you be without this pattern? I'd be present on social media. I'd be consistent. I'd get the last 20% done. I'd interact with my audience. I'd build a community, right? I'd lead, right? And then eliminating it is, can you go out into your field of play, which is essentially business, and operate to the best of your competency without any of the baggage that you don't need anymore. So
yeah, I love that.
I've seen that like play out in many different areas with many different people and many different patterns. I can guarantee you this is something that's doable, but it has to start with that piece of, okay, well, I'm not avoiding anymore like the real issue and hiding behind optimizing for KPIs, etc. So again,
totally.
There.
Well, I think, you know, because of the nature of my work, you know, I could excuse it, but just joking. yeah, it can be easy to gravitate towards strategy, right? And I am aware that like strategy probably is just a teeny portion of it, right? Like these bigger themes we see in our life is about healing. And but yeah, that's that's going to take longer than a weekend, right? It's going to take longer
Yes.
than, and strategies are fun. Like I love strategies. So
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah. I got it. Well, listen, I do have a hard stop with regards to,
Cool.
like, I know we can dive into this, and like you said, I wish I could solve all these things, in one
No,
session
it's
like
been
this,
super
but
fun.
unfortunately, that's not how this stuff works. But yeah, if this feels complete for you, why you just kind of let everybody know, who's the best person to find you, where they can find you. Floor is yours for that.
Oh, yeah, sure. So my business is called Live Large Design, and I help seasoned entrepreneurs evolve, past their 6 figures into more of a global audience where they can reach more of the right people and make a larger impact. So we do that through Lux branding, signature programs, and your online platform. So, like I said, I have a group program launching this August, which I'm super excited about, bringing really my decade of experience into a curated space and community, so people can get that process. And you can find me at www.livelargedesign.com, or Adele Live Large on social media platforms.
Love it. Well, as always, we'll include that in the show notes. But Del, thank you very much for coming on, allowing yourself to be witnessed in this way, given that visibility was the core thing.
Yeah, funny, right?
Yeah. And thank you very much. And for everybody else listening, we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, I loved it. Have a great day.